I thought, why should things just be the way they are? We can be better humans. Hollywood, it was filled with all of these rules. You have to have long hair, so the men in Hollywood want to have sex with you. If they don't want to have sex with you, they're not gonna cast you. And I didn't want to be homeless again, so I grew out my hair. I was mad that I had survived living as a street kid and not being raped there, and then it happened to me once I was in Fancyville. Sexual harassment, all that stuff is like the flaming spear tip that I thought we needed to have addressed. That book, Brave, is my fight to have my own voice for the first time. I knew it was going to be a hell of a battle in the public eye.
But it's not just about men that keep this in place.
No, it's women too.
What happens when you get people that push back and say, I'm part of the patriarchy, and that word can also mean good things?
Well, unfuck yourself is what I would say. What programming went into your head? Deprogram.
Talk to me about Me Too that happened afterwards.
And it was just time. Let's just think differently. It was like someone just pushed a button on a social reset.
Stop the violence! Stop the rape!
It feels like we have this sensitive social sphere out there in media that is ready to pick up and go after these figures. Now their careers get put on hold when we don't know what's happening. Because that is a product of this Me Too movement to a certain extent.
I suppose it is collateral damage. It's important that we're having the conversation about it. It wasn't supposed to be easy. People need to be more brave in their own lives, at work. I'm here to live and tell the tale that you can fight the machine and still survive.
My name is Rose McGowan, and I am brave, and I am you.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
Rose McGowan is brave because she single-handedly exposed what was an open secret in Hollywood. And this was all of this alleged sexual abuse by Harvey Weinstein, a major mogul, and pretty much took down his entire company and many people associated with him. It was a difficult time, it was a stressful time, and it was one that we talked about when I got to go in depth with Rose and talk about the last year of her life and how she has changed so much. What Rose did created what we know now as the Me Too movement, and it was just a storm of many people stepping up and saying it's not okay to have this behavior. And I talked to Rose about that, and also talked to her about some of the collateral damage that is actually unfair from this movement. A lot of people being tried in the court of public opinion, some former guests on London Real, on things that have never been proven in court. And she agreed that there was gonna be some collateral damage when things like this happen, and it could also be something that we had to have a conversation about. And I really appreciated Rose talking to me and really seeing her growth as a person and what it took to really expose this horrendous behavior and how we can have a conversation about this for men and women in the future and make sure this doesn't happen again. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation, and that's what we need to have in the future, a nuanced conversation about these things and go into detail and find out how people feel. This isn't about sound bites and tweets and accusations. This is about really finding out what happened, what's right and what's wrong. And I want this to be the start of this conversation here at London Real. And of course, you know, behind the scenes at London Real, we like to do a lot of other things as well, which means we like to educate. And we've got all sorts of things behind the scenes, whether it comes to broadcast or business or public speaking or just improving your lifestyle. And here's a bit more about what we do.
London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level, together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Rose McGowan, the activist, author, and director. After an acting career in Hollywood that spanned 2 decades, you went public with allegations of abuse against Harvey Weinstein. This became central in exposing the systemic harassment in the entertainment industry that shook the world and led to the Me Too movement. Your book, Brave, chronicles your journey from childhood to Hollywood and your mission to reclaim your life and encourage people to question the power structures around them. Rose, welcome to London Real.
Thank you for having me.
It's great having you. I want to continue the conversation we were having earlier, which was cool. How is London treating you?
London has been very gentle with me.
Okay.
And I've been really grateful for that. I needed, the last couple of years were really, really, really hard. And I thought I needed a place where a cup of tea will take away some of your troubles.
You were just in Oxford yesterday.
Yeah.
How do people react to you here? You know, I mean, it must be like, you must be thinking, I wonder what the UK is going to be like. How does it feel? What do people say to you?
I don't know. People are they're pretty cool customers here. They're not, I mean, I get stopped about once or twice a day, just a woman or a man who says thank you or says something really cool or shares their story with me. But it's not like people running after you down the streets. It's different. It's a different kind of fame. And I appreciate that.
Right. Different from the LA vibe.
Different from the LA vibe.
And different than New York?
Different than New York even. Yeah, New York, there's something about America that always feels, I love America, but it doesn't feel exactly like the safest place. And maybe it hasn't been the safest place for me. Mm-hmm. So it's probably just experience, but it's kind of a triggering place for me.
And this feels safer here?
Yes.
Yeah, it is safer.
I know they talk about knife crimes being on the uptick and all that, and that's terrible, but it almost sounds quaint when you compare it with mass shootings.
Yeah, I find London to be really user-friendly and safe, and if you can get past the weather.
I take the tube.
Yeah. Well,
I love it.
Tube's amazing, right?
Tube's amazing. Gets you where you want to go, like that. It's much easier to navigate than New York subway, which I've still not mastered.
Yeah. And you're not far from me now, so
no, we'll have to hang out.
Green Early, North London. You know, I was learning more about you, and I got a flashback to a point in my life in 1991 where I took a road trip from Los Angeles, where I was working as an aerospace engineer, to MIT, where I was going to school in Boston. It was a 7-day road trip, and I went with 2 of my buddies, funny enough, my fraternity brothers, in one of their Camaros, and I had the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I was in the back seat. And there was no internet back then or mobile phones. So I read that for 7 days.
Isn't it an incredible book?
I was captivated. And I would not only read it, and then I would tell the 2 guys what was happening in Malcolm's life. And I was really inspired by what he did. And he has this really well-known phrase, which is, by any means necessary.
Yes.
And I've been known to have some anger issues as a kid. And I remember you saying that you kind of respected Malcolm because he taught you that anger got things done. Is that a fair enough?
That's a completely fair assessment. And I think enough accolades cannot be heaped upon, his shoulders or his feet. Malcolm X, his book, I reread it because I read it when I was 11, and I reread the autobiography a few months ago, actually.
Really?
And I was like, hello, friend. And it's just this beacon, this light, this I think the world would be so different had he lived, don't you?
Yes. Yes.
I think the world would be a really different place. And I think there's also something that, you know, very much for his time, like black men were not supposed to show anger. They were supposed to be deferential. And women are generally supposed to be deferential and not show anger. And I don't really believe in that. I think we can be whatever we want to at any moment we want to be, you know, whatever we are. And I don't see why prescribed societal thought should dictate how we behave. And I don't think anything's ever been solved by sitting and thinking about it. Sometimes action needs to be taken. It doesn't make it fun. Being in the anger spot doesn't make it pleasant. It's not good for one's health. I mean, look what happened to Malcolm X, for God's sakes. But it does propel things.
It gets things done. And it's necessary in all of our lives.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in that state of anger, but you need to be able to go there, not judge yourself for it, but allow it to happen and flow.
Exactly. And that was, when I wrote Brave, I was angry, but I was more interested in deprogramming a system that had done its damnedest to program me. And if it was programming me, who has a strong mind, what's it doing to other people?
And that's kind of what you like to talk about, is question the system, question what we're all doing, why we're doing it. You've talked about this like tapestry of your own, and pulling out and looking, what are the synthetic fibers and what are the natural fibers, and who are you and who is the program that's being run on you?
Exactly. I feel it's just incumbent upon us. You know, we were talking earlier about how we look, you know, like, is how you look, are you wearing a suit because you want to, or because you're supposed to, because you're going to a bank today, you know, whatever it is it your choice? If it's your choice, cool, just make sure it's your choice. And I think people don't check in with themselves often enough. And really, one of the things I do is I make a list. I'll make a list of like beliefs and then subheadings, you know, under that, like a belief system, and try to ferret out whether the belief is mine or whether it's been something that's been implanted into me. And if it's been implanted in me, then I can get rid of it.
And you have two things that I think are in your benefit from maybe telling this whole story. One is that you weren't born in America, or you weren't born in LA. And the second one is you had a very kind of unique childhood.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could share that, because I think it helps to understand your perspectives.
I grew up in a really unique way, I think, just for the world, not outside of America, but I grew up in another country. I grew up in Italy, but I wasn't with Italians per se. I was in a multinational cult called Children of God, and my father ran the Italian chapter. And we grew up, I was born into it, so there was a very different set of rules. I don't know what was happening in the rest of the world. I have no idea. I don't know what TV shows were on. I don't know what music people were listening to. And I also didn't know what I looked like, because there was very little importance placed on what we looked like. We were supposed to be raised as superminds. And my parents and all of the other parents fought for that, so we had no mirrors. And for the first 10 years, what that gives you is this great freedom to not be a boy or a girl. So imagine getting to 10 years old and you don't subscribe to anything that tells you what you are, other than your own internal feelings. And that, I think, has put me fundamentally at odds with a lot of society, or at least, you know, like when I butt heads with it. And it also, I think, gives me kind of a superpower. I got a grace period, that kind of indoctrination that so many people get, where they have to then unthink and deprogram themselves, you know, as they go along. I didn't get that programming. They tried to program me with other stuff. That didn't really work either. But
you always said you were kind of immune to that. How can you really be immune when you're 1, 2, 3 years old?
I was a strange child. I just came out.
You don't say.
You don't say. I would watch what they were doing, the cult members, and it just wasn't matching up with what they were saying. And I just thought, well, if I say I believe in your God, this is just to make you feel better. Why would I want to make you feel better? If I have to lie to make you feel better, then I'm making myself feel bad. So it just struck me as something of a devil's bargain. And so I was never able to tell people what they wanted to hear. Just it would have probably made my life, I guess, easier in the short term. But I think when you keep giving that part of yourself away, that is just to make other people feel better in the short term instead of doing what's right, you lose yourself.
So it did give you that bubble, though, to where you could kind of evolve in some kind of a weird natural way, without all these kind of societal stereotypes.
Exactly. It's like growing up in a forest and then being thrown out to America.
Right. So that happened next.
Ah.
So how old were you when you went to America? 10. So boom, you go to America.
A Navy base.
Ooh, Navy base. Where was that again?
In Washington State.
Okay.
Yeah, that was some, they changed my name from Rosa to Rose the first day of school. And they put my hand on my chest and they made me lead the class in the Pledge of Allegiance, which I refused to do. And the first words that I said in English, I heard the teachers behind me say, "We're going to get the commie out of her." And I said, "Italians were fascists."
That's quite an introduction.
Dummy.
Right. Yeah, the Pledge of Allegiance can be a little heavy if you really think
and I had no idea what they were talking about. I was like, and they had my hand. They were just like forcing it on my chest while they all repeated it. And nationalism is something that escapes me entirely. I'm not nationalistic in the least. I don't feel like I have a home, and I don't feel a great kinship to any land, which kind of makes me sad, but in a lot of ways, I think it frees me as well.
So you walked away from this one cult, and then you've kind of gone into America.
Which is a cult.
Tell me more about that.
Fox News recently, they're like, Rose McGowan says America was worse than the cult she was in. I'm like, yes, it was. It was harrowing. America was not to be challenged. America did not like to be challenged, and everybody around me wanted things to be done in a very specific way, and I couldn't. It seemed, I say in my book, "Dear America, why is your cheese orange? Why is American cheese," that's the actual name of it, "a congealed blob, a fluorescent orange, in a plastic wrapping? Does this not say a lot about you?"
It's a good question. And so you went from Children of God cults into America, and you're looking at this like, wait a second, and
everyone was telling me how weird it was how I grew up, and I was like, no, it's really weird how you live.
Okay. Nationalism, the way schools were, your education was really different. And
they called me freak every day. They would throw things at me when I'd walk home, and that went on for a number of years, and I was just so bored with it. And "You're the ugliest thing I ever seen." And I would say, you saw me, you did not seen me.
And then you get to Hollywood, which is another kind of cult.
It is. It took me a while to really figure that one out. But it's interesting, they say that there's like in the 70 percentile something that if you've been in one cult, you'll likely find yourself in another. And I found that statistic really interesting, and it was borne out to be true for me.
So even though you're hyper aware, something's still pulling you to these different places. Why? How do you get your head around that? Is that a little scary?
It's meta. Yeah, it's big. It is a little scary. It's also when you're used to really small but intense power structures, it seems there's a familiarity to that. And I think that's what kind of, I didn't go there trying to be famous. I was discovered. So I was never like, I need to be an actor. I have this hole in my chest that's only going to be filled with fame. Not saying that's what actors want, but there's the LA component of that, which does, you know what I mean? You're from there.
Yeah. There's a lot of that in LA.
There is a lot of that in
right.
LA.
But you were bouncing around, homeless, having a pretty crazy time, and boom, you got discovered on the street.
Yeah.
Right after, I think.
My boyfriend had just died.
Right.
Yeah, he had just been killed.
That
sucked.
And you're having an emotional moment on the street.
And this woman, "Do you want to be an actress?" And I'm crying. And I just thought, what ghastly people are these? And then she knew the person I was standing with, and so they kept approaching and kept calling. And 2 weeks later, I was starring in a movie.
How old were you?
17.
And what is Hollywood like when you're a teenager? What is that whole experience like? It's also maybe different now, so back then.
I don't know. I did that, and then I went away for a bit, and then I went back and did another movie, and then by 19, you could say I was really in it. What is Hollywood like? It was filled with all of these rules that were never written down anywhere, but everyone knew the rules, and everyone passed these rules on to you. Female agents were big in my life, and they had definitely a hand in telling me the rules that I had to abide by, such as, you have to have long hair, so the men in Hollywood want to have sex with you. If they don't want to have sex with you, they're not going to cast you. And they said it in more aggressive terms. And I guess I figured they knew, and I didn't want to be homeless again, so I grew out my hair. And that kind of led to the start of this external life. It was like my internal and my external self were so wildly divergent, but stuck together. And it was almost like doing deep undercover work as a famous woman. It was really weird. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but I always knew it wasn't going to be the big deal in my life.
It wasn't going to be the big deal. So you're always kind of playing a part as
Yeah.
a person that plays a part.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. And you're now getting kind of really deep into this, well, you've called it a patriarchy in LA. And I was wondering if you could talk a little more about that, because you talk about it in the book, and you have a great stat about the Directors Guild. But it's not just about men that keep this in place.
No, it's women too. It's not, the patriarchy takes all of us. It's not like, oh, there's 49% of the population men, and they're ruling everything, and we're just here like, no, women actively support this power structure. And they actively support a power structure that doesn't support them, which is, by definition, a cult. And Hollywood, it's almost like biblical. It goes back to like the wizened old man, like on his throne, like going like this. And whenever these kind of edicts are handed down, oh, you have to do this or the studio will be really unhappy with you. Oh, you have to do this magazine cover where you're wearing nothing but an ammo belt, or the studio will be really unhappy with you. Studio will be really unhappy with you. And that's like the God voice talking to you. And you can really substitute one for the other. It's rather chilling, I think.
And it's like 96% of the Directors Guild are men.
Yeah, 96% in the DGA, the Directors Guild of America, are men, and that statistic hasn't changed since 1946. So it's just a really narrow view, and it's primarily white male, and that's just doesn't reflect what I see on the streets. And there's nothing wrong with white men, but we don't only want to have their viewpoint.
What happens when you get people that push back and say, yeah, I am a white male and I'm part of a patriarchy, and that word can also mean good things?
Are you allowed to curse here?
Yes.
Well, unfuck yourself is what I would say.
What does that mean?
Unfuck yourself, deprogram. Go through your mind. And I'm really honestly not interested in men or women or the differences between. I'm really interested in humans. And I think if we can see each other as human before we see each other as a gender, and see ourselves as human before we see each other. I mean, I see myself as human before I see myself as a woman. Like whenever anybody says woman to me, I'm like, what? Oh, okay. Like it doesn't, and maybe that's just because of how I was brought up. I'm not sure. Maybe it clicks in. Maybe it's more of an easy alliance with most people. But with me, it's always been this uneasy like label that I've had put on me that I never really liked. And it comes with so much weight and history. You say the word men, it comes with all the weight and history of that word. Same with women and the weight and history of that word. And I really think if we figure out that we're human before we're anything else, we could really do some really amazing stuff together.
Okay. And if you use a word like patriarchy and say that that's male dominated, is that not playing part of that game of a gender identifying? It
is. It's shorthand. I have no other language available to me right now.
Okay. Dominant power structure.
It's really the power structure.
Okay.
It's the dominant power structure. And it's been given because of Christianity and Islam and all these things. It's been given, fundamentally, it's been a man's purview in that world. And so the power structure has this kind of ghostly specter of a man hanging over it, right? Even though, as we all know, that's an illusion. It's a hard one to break down, but I think it's something necessary to break down.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you want to have that conversation and get it in people's minds and talk about this. Okay.
It's a lot broader than Me Too. It's a lot, my interests lie in just unfucking minds. Like, I watch people get programmed, and then I was in different cults where the programming was so extreme, and it's something that's done without thinking. It's something that's done, we're just gonna put this on TV, and everyone thinks Hollywood stays localized, but it goes out to the world. You know, my quibble isn't with Hollywood, it's just the messaging system. And my quibble is broader than that. I like that word, quibble.
Quibble.
It's a good word.
Why do you use that word?
I don't know, it just came up, but it sounded very British to me. Quibble.
And so if you had to kind of fast forward to 2015 when you decided to write this book, well, how would you fast forward to that date? I mean, career in Hollywood, you know, or do we want to just fast forward and you can tell me why you really decided to write this book?
I had a friend who recommended I wait till I was 80, and I thought, dear God, my book would be so long at that point. I can't wait till I'm 80. But there was a woman on the plane when I came to America, and she told me I should write a book. She was sitting next to me, and I was telling her my story. And I told her she didn't know the half of it. And I've always kind of filmed things for posterity, you know, in my head. I talk in the book about finding a camera when I was really young. So as we're having this conversation now, part of me is across the room filming this just to file it away for later, and I'll study it and dissect it, roll it around. And it's something that I do, and I think that helped me when embarking on writing a book, to really have really solid memories and really very cinematic memories in a weird way. Like, cinema and my brain kind of are so intermingled, I can't kind of separate them.
Okay. And it was a really difficult, painful process.
It was a beast.
You told me earlier, you described it. How did you describe it earlier?
I said it was like giving birth through a spiky birth canal. It was like,
It took 3 years.
It took 3 years to write, and I love words, and words mean so much to me. And reading is what saved me at many points in my life. And I talk about that in my book too. It's just how reading was something that was such a fundamental tool for survival, and also just the beauty of words and the impact of language. So I crafted my book very carefully, but the memories that you call up, and then the ghosts are sitting around with you. You know, you're talking about your dad, and it's not like, okay, I'm shutting my laptop and going to dinner. It's not like your ghost of a dad isn't sitting there at dinner going, you know, with you. And I didn't visit my father's grave for the 3 years I was writing the book. I was too angry with him. I was too angry with him. But once it came out, it was cool. We were good. I could go visit.
Why were you angry?
It was just rehashing a lot of, it was just, you know, I talk in there, like at one point I plotted to kill him.
Like, for reals?
For reals.
Like when you were writing it or when you were a kid?
Oh, when I was a kid.
Yeah, okay.
And I used to sneak out and leave the door wide open in hopes that someone would come in and kill him for me.
You're not happy about the cults moving, his parenting, all of that stuff?
He was bipolar, unmedicated, and he was a wild human. He was a really unique, magical unicorn of a being, but also could be at times very abusive. And there was a point where the dark side eclipsed the light, and that was really difficult. He was an incredible artist. His work just was so psychedelic, and his mind, the way he saw things, fascinated me endlessly. A really, truly stellar human being, but I think what kept him from being a free human was that he was really locked in this role of being what a man was, that he couldn't ask for help, that he couldn't do these things, and it seemed like he was just trapped in this kind of suit that he never wore. That it was a suit not of his making, but he still wore the mantle of the suit, and he couldn't get out of it. He couldn't express himself. He couldn't say, I've messed up, or I need help with this. He could not do that. And I think that to me is the patriarchy. That's what I talk about when I talk about it. It's more like the invisible suit they stick you in, you know, how you get stolen as a man so young and told what you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to behave. It's so rigid, and it doesn't leave a lot of freedom for developing your creativity and who you are. And what if you're just a different kind of unique person? Who knows? You know, I just wish we had more of a reprieve.
Yeah, I have 2 young boys. They're 1 and 2 right now.
Wow.
So I get to watch this, and I have a 14-year-old stepdaughter. So I'm watching this.
Wow,
and
what
thinking,
an interesting...
Yeah. So, and I grew up with her for about 8 years, so I got to see her kind of turn into a woman and be a big part of her life. And now I'm looking at these boys, and I'm just like, man, like there's a lot of things I definitely don't want to do. I don't want to tell them to be a man, you know.
Right.
But I want them to see.
But actually take pride in being a man too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a conundrum.
It's a line you have to walk.
It's a really fine line.
And then they also got the media on this side. So the latest Pixar movie is programming all sorts of behaviors and relationships between genders in the background, right?
Yeah, it is.
And there's only so much I can do. I mean, I can do a lot, but there's that going on too.
Right.
And they're in London. So, I mean, I've got my work set out, but I'm thinking about this right now, Rose, because I'm like, wow, because I want them to be able to be creative and expressive and all that, and everything they want. And I also want them to be able to, I don't know, defend themselves and do jujitsu and then also do art and not feel like one is different than the other.
Right.
So
I think everything is an art form. You know, I talk to a lot of people who say, and it's interesting, you'll meet people, this happened a lot in LA actually, and they would say, oh, I'm not on the creative side. They would wave their hands like it's something that was horrible that might be catching. And I would think, well, how very sad for you. Because if I was an accountant, I would be the most creative accountant out there. If I was a lawyer, I'd be a creative lawyer. I think creativity can go with us, whether I think art is jujitsu. I think art isn't necessarily just painting or photography or what we ascribe it to be. I think it's freedom of mind. And I think jujitsu, anything, art can be in the beauty of that motion, right?
yeah, I think Andy Warhol said, you know, business is the most beautiful art.
Ha ha ha.
Of course, he would say that.
He would say that.
But no, I agree with you. I hate it when people say I'm not an artist, I'm not creative, because it's like, well,
It's so narrow.
yeah,
Why would you say that about yourself?
yeah, it's a weird programming.
It's a total programming.
Yeah. And I mean, I grew up in that because I was the kind of the science tech geek, and I was like, oh, I'm choosing science over
My
humanities.
sister is also an aeronautical engineer.
Okay.
She's a material science engineer.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I went to MIT, and there's literally no English department, no humanities department. There's really very little, you know.
Yeah, I think it should
taught
be
creativity.
STEAM, not STEM.
STEAM.
What the science, technology, English, and math. But it should be art should be in there too.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. So anyways, I'm work in progress raising these boys. Did you always know that in this book you would be talking about what happened in '97 with Harvey in that hotel? Was this always going to be there, and did that make the writing of this heavier?
Yes. It did. It's not the thrust of the book. It's just another story in the book, but it's an important story. And it's kind of the crescendo in some ways. And again, it's the book isn't about that. It's really about so much more, but that is an unfortunate thing that happened in my life, and it's something that made me very angry. Rightfully so.
And you had been holding that, not inside, but you had been holding
I've
that
been holding that flame for a long time.
for 18 years,
Yeah.
20 years. And you had talked about it, but you hadn't put it in this kind of, I don't know, I was going to say weaponized form, but, you know, in a I don't know, in a powerful form?
In a powerful form.
Was
No.
it the book? Was it the timing? What was it?
It was, I think it was all of it, and I think Donald Trump really helped. You know,
Explain that.
well, I think he showed to the good liberals who thought everything had been taken care of, and sexism is just this nuisance thing that we hear about now and then, and racism is just this thing, oh, we hear about it from that crowd. It was the good guys on the left. I mean, didn't Malcolm X say, give him a southern white racist over a northern white liberal any day?
Yeah, he did say that.
Because he would know who his enemy was.
And so Trump reminded us that we actually still have a problem.
That this is what this is, and this is the face of what this looks like, and this is how it behaves, and this is what it talks like, and this is what it looks like, this is what it sounds like, this is what it feels like. Yeah, he helped a lot. And that's why I have a weird love for him.
Can you tell more about that love of him?
It's a strange position to be in, certainly, to be like, I love Donald Trump. It's funny to me because it's so absurd, but here we are, he's the president. I just think he does things sometimes where I'm like, you have to admire his chutzpah. You're like, wow, what are you?
I think you said he's like honest about all the things he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But dishonest about the things he should be.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's obvious.
He just makes it really plainly obvious what it is, what the it of whatever it is. Like all those guys have been doing the same stuff he's been doing all along. All the other presidents, he's just the one that he's like, hey, doing this. And people are like, I'm like, did you not know that was happening already?
Right.
I mean, he might be pushing it harder and doubling down on it, but it's all stuff, the drones with Obama, the children in cages, that was during Obama, like, and I'm not pro-Democrat nor am I pro-Republican. I'm pretty much against all of it. But in terms of showing us how to grow, I think Donald Trump's done a hell of a job.
I had a guy named Simon Sinek in here who's got a great concept called Start With Why, and he said, Trump is a reflection of us. He's a reflection of America or of the world, of what we really are. Do you believe that?
I think are and aren't. I think he really makes people assess what their core values are, and their core values might be shitty values, at least to me, but I think there's I agree with him, but I think he's also what you're not. And I think never has there been a public figure that's made it so easy to use him as a mirror for yourself and describe what you are and aren't by just simply placing his cardboard cutout in front of you and staring at it. I think it's a really interesting mirror to look in.
And that's why you love him.
And that's why I love him.
That makes total sense, Rose.
Thank you.
It does. To the book, it was the right time, Trump. You obviously had time to think about it, to really spend time writing this book. But 10 years ago, would this have not...
It wasn't time.
It wasn't time.
It wasn't time for me personally in my life, and it wasn't time culturally. Society wasn't primed yet. It was kind of like I was like, come on, wake up, wake up. And also social media wasn't in place yet. Like there were a lot of things that just had to naturally evolve before it could happen.
Did you know this was going to drop like a bomb?
Yes.
When you started writing it?
Yes.
Okay.
There was $1 million bounty on my book.
How does that happen? How does someone know you're writing a book?
Well, he knew everything, and he hired a company called Black Cube, he being Weinstein, to come after me, and they stole 125 pages of it before it was published. So to have a rapist in your head that's a bad acid trip.
Yeah. And so he was always had you in his sights
Always.
Because he knew you were going to be a problem.
Yes, because I never signed a non-disclosure agreement.
And that was a conscious decision you made.
Yes, it was a conscious decision I made.
So you settled with him, $100,000, no NDA, and at the time, that was something you were like, it seemed like a lot of money.
Yeah, well, I tried to buy a billboard that said Harvey Weinstein is a rapist, but Gannett Outdoors wouldn't sell it to me. Shocking, but true. I thought I was going to get one. I wanted to replace the sign on Sunset Boulevard where the Marlboro Man always had his ad by the Chateau Marmont. I thought that would be a good place for a billboard.
It is a good place for a billboard.
It is a good place for a billboard.
But you couldn't do that.
I couldn't do that, so I
therapy.
donated the money and I got some therapy.
Okay, but never signed that NDA.
Never signed an NDA.
And in the back of your mind, this was always going to be something you would talk about.
Yes.
And he knew that.
He knew that.
Okay. So in the meantime, he's making it very difficult for you to work in Hollywood.
Very difficult. I got stuck on a TV show because I couldn't get a job in film. Film and TV weren't as crossed over as they are now. And it was a lot of people were very confused by my move into TV. And for me, it was just purely a move to keep food on the table. You know, because once you get famous and then you get blacklisted, what do? What's your option?
Right.
To make a living, where are you going to go for a job? It makes it extremely difficult.
And a few directors around the way kind of stuck their neck out, is that right to say, about like Rodriguez, where he put you in the film knowing that there was beef between you and Harvey, or?
No, because then he sold the movie to him to distribute.
Right. And then said he didn't. Okay.
Yeah, but he did.
And then said he didn't think Harvey did distribute it because of that. Who knows, right? Yeah. Okay. So you're right.
I keep wanting to say things in Yiddish. I'm like, it's a bunch of mishigas. I don't know. Today's a Yiddish day. Okay. I love the Yiddish language.
Okay. You speak Yiddish?
No, I just speak Yiddish.
Okay, sounds good. So you're writing this. They know you're writing it. They're trying to stop it. Yeah. They got like ex-Mossad agents trying to get it away.
Infiltrating my life, like pretending to be sexual assault survivors. And becoming close with me to steal the book and to find out my designs and my plans. And then, so I called the New York Times. I called this woman at a group called Ultraviolet, actually, which is like a feminist action pack. And I said, I need help. And they put me in touch with Jodi Kantor from the New York Times. And I told her the story is bigger than you can imagine. It's bigger than you can ever know. And then I had to buy time. So for the last year that I was writing the book, I was in fake negotiations with the monster, as I call him in the book, to get the book done, but also to give it enough time to get these New York Times articles written, because they needed to come out before my book.
Right. And what negotiations were you with the monster?
$1 million.
Oh, like settlements?
Settlements.
Okay.
Which I was never going to do.
But it kept them at bay and allowed you to write.
It kept it at bay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to understand this whole giving birth analogy.
Yeah.
So you're not only writing a book, which can be a pretty lonely process, but you are juggling...
massive stress. I'm juggling some of the most formidable people, and his lawyer is Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton's lawyer, David Boyce. And that's the lawyer who was coming for me behind the scenes. He's a big baddie. He hired Black Cube. It's all completely insane, of course, but it's really just that book, Brave, is my fight to have my own voice for the first time, and it's fitting that it was such a fight even just to get the book out.
Did the woman at the New York Times right away get it, or did she have to spend a little time looking into it?
Oh, she got it, but she had to. But because the story was so big and had grown, it was one of those. It was like everybody knew, but nobody was willing to go on the record, kind of thing. And so I gave them documents, and just set it up. And then I called in Ronan Farrow, and kind of got him at war with. At the time, he was with NBC, and I got NBC into a war for the story with the New York Times because I knew one of them would fall.
And without both, it might not have gotten done.
Exactly.
Do you think it might not have?
It wouldn't have.
Really?
I don't believe it would have if it was just one.
Why?
Because he and his cronies, they exert such powerful influence. His protection came from the Democratic Party.
Because he was a big fundraiser there and knew a lot of people. Even the New York Times, they could have.
Could have.
Wow.
Because they could have done the story any time in the past. They all knew. Maybe not to the levels of the depravity, most people didn't know that, but certainly the stories had been out there for a long time, yeah.
October 2017, this drops. What's that month of your life like?
Yeah, that month was extra.
You have good adjectives, Rose. Extra.
It was a little bit extra. It was, I met my partner that I'm with now the night before the New York Times story broke. And I had just gotten word that the story was coming out the next day. And my friend brought Rain, my partner, to my house, and I was just not fit. It wasn't like trying to make a love connection. It was just like, hello, human being. And I had just gotten off the phone and gotten the news, and I said, you don't know this, but the whole world is going to change tomorrow. She's like, okay, crazy lady. And I'm like, no, the world's actually going to change tomorrow. You'll see, watch. And I felt like I had ropes in my hands with fireballs on the end of them, and I was going like this, just gearing up for battle, because I knew it was going to be a hell of a battle in the public eye. And it was. And simultaneously, I wind up on book tour, so I get asked about it was hard.
The book tour happened a couple months later.
Yeah, a couple months later.
And what's it like being in the media storm? You said the media was brutal on you.
Brutal.
And how were they brutal? Because on the one hand, the New York Times is coming out with all this stuff, and some media is telling your story,
right?
Backing your story, I guess.
No, they're telling the facts.
Okay, right.
They're not taking sides. They're just telling the facts as they lay. But it's a lot of hostility from people that want things to stay status quo, from both people in the industry and just in the world. They don't like, it's like if you have this comfortable chair under you, even though you know it's not rightfully yours, people don't want you to be like, no, sorry, you need to sit in that chair. They don't want to move chairs, even if the other chair is better for them.
It's a good analogy. And so what happened? What was the biggest thing that surprised you about that media backlash?
I wouldn't say anything surprised me. It was just the force and the sheer, like if you touch your phone, you have an app and you hold your phone and you're like, oh my God, this is the porthole into like a billion people's voices, and they all have thoughts, and it's like a live wire. The second week after the New York Times story broke, I was in Hawaii and I let my phone go in the ocean. I was just like, just die. I needed to break that line between, it's to go through the cyclone and then still fight it, it's a very hard thing to survive. And also all the power people coming after me and trying to shut me down. And then, a lot of women trying to help that too.
And you had to keep fighting because you're being challenged. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? So it is a big fight.
It was a big fight, and what was sad about it was that, it was a big fight. And that the fight doesn't encompass the fact that my book is about so much more, that it's about thought structure, right? That part of the discussion was kind of lost. It wasn't, it was too broad-minded at the time, I think. I think we are starting to have that conversation now. Whereas before, it was like very focused on, I would do an interview and they would just ask me about the hotel room. It's like you're being sexist by reducing my life to a rape. And American media, you just have to watch CNN. It's wild. They have no news from anywhere else in the world unless there's a terrorist attack. Nothing exists outside of America. Nothing. Like there's no weather in Africa. It doesn't exist. And so for this to have gone global the way it did was quite the storm.
And everyone's scared because it's starting to rattle all of their power structros. So first it's the Weinstein Group, and then it's law of Hollywood, and then it starts going into politics and they have corporates. And
it was just kind of like, I swear I was sitting around my house one night in LA and I was wondering, I was like, it was probably about a year before my book was done. I was like, I wonder if I can make people 10% smarter. That's an arbitrary number, but I bet I could be a 10% better person. I wonder if I could do that for other people too. And so I kind of put that on my to-do list, kind of push society. And so I feel like sexual harassment, all that stuff is like the flaming spear tip that I rode in on, but isn't necessarily, it's not the all-encompassing thing. It's not what my actual work is about, but it is something that I thought we needed to have addressed. I thought, why should things just be the way they are? Why? Who says? Again, that goes back to just accepting the power structure for the way it is. I thought, I think we can be better humans.
Are people getting that message now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You seem really different than a year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched videos.
I'm not being triggered.
Yeah. I mean, book tour, transvestite, confrontation, Stephen
Nightmare.
Colbert.
That was right afterwards.
Okay. It was the same day?
It's literally a half an hour
You
later.
had the same jumper on, yeah. And I mean, I understandably why, but I mean, you got a lot on your shoulders. You're emotional. And now you seem stoic.
Yeah, I'm really calm.
What happened in a year?
I healed. I left America. I went to Sicily, and I called it life rehab. And I just got well and balanced and away out of the eye of the storm. And I had to call time on it. I was like, okay, I've given enough. I need to live now. My back was swollen like about 3 inches up from the middle of my neck to the middle of my back, about this much extra. And it was just knots that had swollen up that were just constantly, just ripping apart on my back. And I was in tears just walking down the street. I was in so much pain. The physical toll was pretty immense.
Do you think that was a manifestation of mental pain?
Completely.
Yeah. Okay. So you did unplug and got out of that once you had fought your battle and got the book out there and answered all the questions that were worth answering.
Right.
You did those interviews where they ask you those questions and reduce your life down to the rape.
Right.
And you did it. And then you're
I
like, okay, cool. I'm going to leave this with you guys and I'm going to go check out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to let you guys marinate in this and hopefully the next go around will go a bit better and that it'll be a little more cerebral and nuanced, which I think is what we're doing now.
It was quite a boom. Did you expect that big boom? Was there anything about that you didn't expect? No.
No, the world was going to change, whether it liked it or not.
Talk to me about Me Too that happened afterwards.
Right.
And it was the hashtag, a lot of people using that hashtag, and it became this...
I became kind of synonymous with it.
Yes.
Right. Well, so an activist named Tarana Burke started the hashtag about 10 years ago. And Alyssa Milano found the hashtag and just said, has this ever happened to you? Me Too. So what I understand about Me Too is like, it's a shorthand for survivors to speak to each other. Did this happen to you? Me Too. That's literally what it is. But the media created a Me Too movement. I mean, you have the civil rights movement, you have Malcolm X, you have Martin Luther King Jr., you have different movements, but this one it wasn't that. Me Too was, it was like someone just pushed a button on a social reset. And it was just time. Let's just think differently all at once. And everyone's like, freaking out. But we can do this. We can think differently. But Me Too is really because I was on book tour, like when that popped off, so all my questions were about Me Too and the rape. And it was just like, it got very frustrating for me just because what I wanted to talk about was kind of the broader structure that would allow such things to even have to happen in the first place, that we would need such a hashtag. But, it made it sound like there's thousands of women with pitchforks in the street running after men. And I think that was a media-created phenomenon. And not true. It's simply a way for people to communicate. And so in that way, I think it's done a lot of good.
And what about I think it's like 90 women that came out talking about Weinstein afterwards.
Yeah.
how do you feel about them and their stories that came later? And
I'm proud of them because there's way more than 90. You know, and I'm proud of them too, just for surviving it. Not all of us, you know, anybody could watch what I went through and be like, dear God, why would I want to put myself through that? You know, it's not exactly like I'm the poster child for why somebody would want to come out and speak. It's not like it's going to go easy on you. It's not like those two people that were in that Finding Neverland documentary about Michael Jackson, you know, are finding it easy probably right now with everyone accusing them. You do it for money. You're like, what money? You do it for attention. I already had attention. It's not. This is not what this is.
You called it the year of the trigger.
Year of the trigger.
And you said it wasn't supposed to be easy for us.
No, it wasn't supposed to be easy, but we got through it. And I think we're still growing, and that's what's great.
Where is it now? Where's Me Too now?
I think I don't know about Me Too, but I know where I am. You know, in a growth phase, in a phase where it's a healing chapter, you know? Yeah. I think there's a lot of healing going on. And I think it's like, you know, when you clean your closet, you make a mess. But guess what? Your closet gets clean. That's how, sometimes you have to make the mess. It's really simple.
And what about people that have been caught in the Me Too movement? Maybe it's friendly fire or collateral damage or this kind of reactionary force to any allegation. And I mean, you know, I can think of names like, I don't know, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's been on this show, or Aziz Ansari, which was more like a date that then kind of, and then maybe it goes on to Michael Jackson and R. Kelly, but it feels like we have this sensitive social sphere out there in media that is ready to pick up and go after these figures. What about when now their careers get put on hold, when we don't know what's happening? Because that is a product of this Me Too movement to a certain extent.
I suppose it is collateral damage. And that sucks. It would suck to be in that crosshair. I think we're all figuring this out as we go along. And there's no easy answer, you know, but I think it's important that we're having the conversation about it. And I think it's important that people are talking about it. It's important to me that a young man came up to me the other night and said it changed how he and his mates talk about girls. That was nice. It's the woman at the restaurant who says her waitresses are no longer getting pinched on the ass. So that's nice. It has permeated culture in all sorts of different ways. But I think the end result is going to be that all of us, just kind of reset ourselves and try to be better humans. That's what I see happening.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because, like you said, you got to kind of clean the closet, and it is going to make a mess.
It is.
And I guess it is going to be messy now, and we're having all these conversations and trying to figure it out. Yeah, I mean, I heard Sean Penn talking to Mark Maron like a few months ago, and he was like talking about it, and I just want to like say something he said and just get your thoughts, because I was trying to figure it out in my own head, you know, as a male, and he was saying it's too black and white. It creates stridency and rage without nuance. And he says when people try to discuss it in a nuanced way, the nuance gets attacked.
Well, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
He's not wrong. He and I are saying very similar things in that point, you know, and that's largely, you can lay that at the media's hands and how they clickbait stuff and how they run their headlines and how, you know, how they want to stir the pot. So there does need to be a more nuanced conversation, but that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. What do you think of this concept of political correctness, or of, everyone being so scared to say something? I mean, you didn't even grow up in America, so you must see America as this weird, I mean, I see it when I go back. Sometimes it just seems like this weird, dysfunctional beast.
I say something wrong all the time.
And now it's almost like super hypersensitive, it seems.
It's scary, and there's not, you're just going to get nailed, basically, and you have to make peace with the fact that you're going to say something dumb, but you're like, is it dumb? I guess it's dumb. Oh, I guess if I see it from that perspective, that could be considered pretty dumb. Okay, that was dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's from a statement standpoint, but also they're like, okay, when in doubt, pull back and we can't take a risk on something, especially when it's these big corporations. So it's like at the first sign, let's pull back, which is kind of this political, just don't say it. I mean, the opposite of Trump, really.
It's the opposite, yeah.
And that's weird dynamic that's kind of happening, I guess.
They need to be brave.
Yeah.
People need to be more brave. I think it would, in their own lives and at work and societally. And yes, it is uncomfortable on the front lines. Can you stand it? Absolutely. I'm here to live and tell the tale that you can fight the machine and still survive. And I think that corporations are never known for their bravery, are they? Mm-mm. Rarely. Usually the creator, like say a Steve Jobs or somebody like that, yes. But after that, no.
So you would say to someone who's been out there who thinks they're part of that collateral damage, then they need to step up and be brave and fight for their own nuance and their own rights.
Yeah,
and say,
very much so.
Guess what? They have to, okay,
guess what? Let's have a conversation.
Right. That's
but I also think, like Louis C.K. and people like that, like I think he should just have a round table with the women that he's done his thing to, and then have a talk with them, and if they give the blessing, then go on with your life. Go back to your comedy, do it, but own it.
Right.
Own it. And talk about it, I would love to do a show where I talk to people who've been accused. Not the super predators, because that's a category that's just its own thing.
There's no resolution there. That's
a mind that's not. But with the lower level stuff.
Like Louis, potentially.
Power abuse. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the immaturity, why it's like the 13-year-old boy getting back at the girls that didn't want to go out with him, whatever it is, who knows what it is.
Yeah.
All wrapped up into abuse of power, essentially, at the end of the day. Let's talk about this. But yeah, as far as you're not going to say to some pedophile priest, come talk to someone and then go on your merry way. That's a different kind of mindset.
What are we going to do with that mess? There's no one talking about it right now, is there? I mean, we're talking about it, but I just feel like there's not enough.
Cardinal Pell just got convicted.
Right.
For 6 years.
Okay. So it's happening, but slower.
The church can take its time.
Right.
There was somebody who I did this art video, and someone did a 10-minute breakdown of the video and listed all the reasons why I was in the Illuminati and sending out Illuminati messages in my video. I said, Rose McGowan was sent to destroy Christianity. And I was like, that's a really good idea. I hadn't thought of that. Note to self, destroy Christianity.
But you wouldn't mind sitting down with some of these people and talking this out and finding a resolution. Because, with someone like a Louis C.K. or some of these people, you can't banish them forever. There has to be something.
No, but there also needs to be some culpability and just be like, you know what? I fucked up.
Right.
I fucked up. I was a weirdo and I fucked up. Do you forgive me? Yeah? Cool. All right. I promise to be a better human. Let's go. That's really all it would take. But it's when there's no acknowledgement that it becomes harder for them to come back, and also does a disservice to victims.
Right now, it seems like our choice is permanently blackball them, like they used to do in Venice back in the day. It's
right.
They're just gone as long as we don't talk about them.
I think we need to have a conversation.
I agree.
Again, not if they're pedophile, not if they're serial rapists or something like that, or rapists. That's a different category. But yeah, I think a nuanced conversation is exactly what we need. What happened to you when you were a little boy that made that okay? And what happened to you when you got power that made that little boy think this was a good idea? What programming went into your head? Dissect it. Throw it away. Deprogram. I think if we use a lot of like how cult deprogrammers, I think society could use some of them.
Yeah. How do they do it?
They often start with looking at belief systems and fears and seeing why somebody has a belief that they have and where did it come from. It's kind of what I talk about, I watched my father wire people's minds. I know how to unfuck them. That's what I'm doing in my book.
I think it'd be very interesting to see you sit down with a lot of these people and
I think so
have
too.
these conversations. Very much so. Is there a statute of limitations for certain behavior? Obviously not for criminal behavior, but is there a point where we look back 40 years in someone's yearbook and we say, okay, was this a bad person or inappropriate, or was this a sign of the times?
I think it depends on what it is, I suppose. Are you talking about blackface in the yearbooks, or are you talking about anything?
Well, it's hard to justify blackface.
That one you can't really justify.
It's hard to do that, but it's just like, it seems like, yeah, I don't know. These are questions I'm having. Like they're going, our Supreme Court, nominee reviewer process. There's a lot of other baggage in there as well, a lot of other issues. But yeah, I'm just wondering, because this could go in many directions.
This could go in a lot of directions. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out.
Yeah,
I know we're in a new frontier.
Do you need to see some resolution with Weinstein and all that stuff, or is it? Are you done?
Sorry. I'm done, but I just wish it was all done. I don't think anybody wants it to keep going on. I don't think anybody does. But he did this. He's very much the reason he is in this situation. He did this. I know, I was there.
And the latest things that we're hearing, like you said, about the Michael Jackson documentary and these other things where everyone seems to want to really talk about these things and think about these things. That documentary 5 years ago, would it have had the same effect?
I don't think so.
And why?
I don't think the documentary would have been made.
Because people in power could have stopped it. And there wouldn't be the voices to say, no, this has to be made.
There wouldn't be that, no, you don't get to shut me down. I have other avenues.
So you've empowered, you and a lot of other people have empowered a whole new group of people to say, you're not going to shut me down anymore because Rose did it and all these other people did it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, it's not our shame. Hand it back.
What does that mean when you say it's not my shame?
There's so much there's so much shame. That's the number one thing that people that are victimized say, that they have so much shame. And the only shame I ever carried was, it wasn't shame, I was mad at myself. I was mad that I had survived living as a street kid, as a homeless kid, and not being raped there. And then it happened to me once I was in Fancyville. That really bothered me. I was mad at myself for letting my survival instincts down. But I was in a meeting with my boss. How was I supposed to know? But I think when I say shame, give it back, it's almost like you're sitting at a bus stop and you're just waiting for your bus and someone comes by and throws a mud pie at your head, and it's shame, and that mud is all over you now, and you're just sitting there like this, and the reality is now you can scrape all that mud off and be like, actually, this pie is yours. You take that back. This is not mine. I don't need to feel this. This doesn't need to stick to me. What you did doesn't stick to me. It's yours. You own it.
Is it all off you now?
Mostly,
is it all gone?
yeah.
Mostly. Hard to get all that stuff off.
It's hard to get all that stuff off. I still have nightmares.
You said something else recently, too, that you said a lot of people know this fight or flight reflex, but there's also the freeze reflex.
Yeah,
I think it's
freeze
important
is big.
because a lot of people freeze, and then a lot of people beat themselves up for the freeze.
Yeah. It's actually, I think, more common than the other two. The freeze, I think, is the most common. I was in an Uber right after the big news stories broke, and the driver didn't see that it was me, and I was sitting behind him, and he was going on and on about Harvey Weinstein and da-da-da, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And he's like, I just don't understand why these women couldn't just run. And I'm like, haven't you ever been so scared that you froze? And he said, now that you mention it, when I was 9 years old, I got so scared, I froze. And my legs had turned to stone and I couldn't move. And he's like, that's what it's like? And I said, that's what it's like. Yeah, you turn into a stone and you can't save yourself. You're just a rigid statue. I'm glad that they've added fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah, because that can really trigger that shame.
Yeah, definitely. Like, why was I unable to move? But it's like when someone, if you're at a haunted house and someone jumps out and says, boop, and you freeze like that for a second, you know, but now imagine the scary thing keeps happening. So you're trapped and your brain is going so fast and so slow all at the same time trying to figure out what's going on, because this series of unfolding events is not what was in your head. It was not, I was in a meeting, this is not how this meeting was supposed to go. I imagine if you had a meeting today, you probably did not think you were going to be raped by the end of it. I too had that same assumption.
What do men say to you when they stop you on the street and they say, hey, Rose? I mean, you were voted Man of the Year by GQ, I think, last year.
That was pretty cool.
What do the men say? Like you said, people stop you in London, but what do they say?
They say really cool stuff. They say, like I said, my favorite was just the other night, this like really beautiful young man who's probably like 25. And he was like, we just speak differently about girls now. And it wasn't meaning in a PC way. I think he meant it. He's like, we see them as human. And it's variations of that, or I've got daughters, or, you know, and I always think even if you had sons, it'd be good to think differently. But it's lovely. And I said at the GQ Awards, you know, in my speech, I said, you know, people ask me if what I do is for women, and I'm like, no. In the abstract, it's for men.
What does that mean?
It means that I think like, you know, when you're reading the autobiography of Malcolm X and he's calling white people a white devil and you're reading it and it's hard to take, you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
But fair enough, right? Historically, this is how this went down. This is how a lot of these people think, and this is what this person experienced, and they have a right to that. So I think it must be, as a man, to know that there are these super predators in your midst. It gives you a bad name, right? And you're stuck with this, like, just like how I hate maybe being stuck in the white crowd. I'm like, oh, I'm a white devil, damn it. I didn't mean to be. I just got stuck in that skin in this lifetime. That's how it shook out. So I think it's like, how do I explain that? How would you explain that?
But that is part of it, because that's why I do feel angry, because it's like, that doesn't represent me.
Yeah, it's not
You know,
me.
it's
I'm
like
one of the
not me.
good guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I always say, be better. I had a guy
Yeah.
that got up in
Which
my
is good
face in
advice.
New York, and he was like, I'm one of the good guys. And I was like, great, be better.
Which is great advice.
Great, be better.
Yeah.
Don't stop, keep going.
Right. I guess that's the advice for even the collateral damage people. It's just like, okay.
Be better.
Be better, step up, defend yourself.
Yeah.
And this is all part of us all evolving.
It's a collective growth.
It's going to be bumpy.
It's going to be, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
It was hard for me to read The White Devil from Malcolm, but
Yeah.
I did see it as fair enough.
Yeah.
So Malcolm went to Mecca, and he saw white people going to Mecca.
Yeah.
And he came back and said, maybe I was wrong to categorize everyone as a devil.
And then he really started thinking about it as an American thing.
Right. And then he got killed.
And then he got killed.
What do you make of that evolution of him? One thing I always thought fascinating about him, that he did evolve, because that was hard. I mean,
That's a hard
enough to
evolution.
It killed him. I mean,
That evolution killed him.
yeah. Because he was honest.
Because he was honest.
He couldn't-
Truth gets you killed.
You ever worry about your life?
Yes.
Still?
Hopefully not.
You must have really been worried.
I was pretty stressed. It was pretty, felt like the life force was blinking on low. And there was a lot of people coming for me.
Do you think you'll evolve like Malcolm? Change your mind, change your views?
Well, yes. In some ways, I have. I think really this past year and a half, 2 years has been made me evaluate a lot of things and really get to the core of why I was like, why are you compelled to do what you do? And really that compulsion comes from, I just see so much beauty in humanity. I really, really do. I see so much beauty in people that they can't even maybe see themselves. And if they do see it, I want them to see even farther. And that's what I like. And that's my compulsion. And I think, I'd like to think maybe in the afterlife sometime, I could have a conversation with Malcolm X. That'd be pretty cool.
And you're probably getting to see this movement and what you've done for these greater knock-on effects, because you're not in the middle of that storm now, and you can say, hey, maybe we are all evolving as humans. And,
we are, and that's what I wanted.
And you want to take us a bit further, I guess.
Yeah, that's all.
What's happening next with Rose?
I'm playing my first show at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in August for my album called Planet 9. It's like music. It's almost like the reward for going through the book in some ways. It actually, like, it's really healing. It's really beautiful, kind of like music to go to space to.
Cool. And no one-woman show or one-person show up there?
Yeah.
But you're going to perform. Would you ever talk?
Yeah, I'm going to talk. I'm also doing some talks here. I'm doing one at the South Bank Center and then the National Concert Hall in Dublin. That's all like at the end of April and early May. But we'll see where it goes, you know? I'm finding my footing outside of Hollywood. It's a whole new world.
Will you ever go back to LA?
I love the land there. It's so beautiful. California is so beautiful. But it's a mind thing for me. Would you ever go back?
No, I can't. There's just something weird going on in LA. And I don't like the energy, and I don't want to be there.
It's beautiful and it's harrowing. It's a dark place. It's got a real dark underbelly and overbelly. And it's weird. Everybody's obsessed with looking hot. And I'm like, no, but you actually want to be cool. There's a temperature difference. Like, you don't want to be like, I'm so hot, you know, like men and women. It's like this weird bubble, but it'd be fine if that crazy bubble just stayed right there, like a containment around them or something, but it goes to the world. That's when it becomes really dangerous.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about politics? We're going to see you in DC sometime? You got that scheming look going on there. You're a pretty good planner. You're a pretty good schemer.
I'm a pretty good schemer. We'll see how it goes after my op-ed in the New York Times.
Okay, that's coming out soon. Yeah. Okay. But it would be as a Republican, they say.
If they'd have me.
Stranger things.
Stranger things.
Stranger things. Okay. So
it was great talking to you.
Yeah, it was good talking to you too. I'm always curious just to ask a couple more questions just about you. What's something that just you do every day that's just not negotiable? Something that makes you feel good and who you are? Is there any kind of daily practice that you do?
I read. Yeah. So I've read 10 books in the last 2 weeks. Wow. I'm kind of a voracious reader.
Okay, what kind of stuff?
The last 10 days I had to do a lot of press, so I wanted something really simple. So I found this bizarre 1960s series of detective novels from Wales, a very remote village in Wales, and it's like missing sheep, things like that. It's something so banal, but it's keeping me on an even keel. This Welshman and his sheep.
Yeah, and you're close to Wales, so.
And close to Wales, and it's quite meditative. I go between all kinds of books, but I try to choose things that match the mood I'm in.
Okay. A few other questions. If I was going to ask 5 of your friends, what's Rose's superpower? How is she able to do the things that she does? What would they say is yours?
Being brave. Which I say in my book doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means you do the scary thing anyway. That was my father's nickname for me, the brave one. Curse. Kind of a curse.
Kind of. Best day of your life, worst day of your life.
Ooh. I'd say the worst day of my life was the day I got raped. And the best day of my life? I'd like to think I haven't had it yet. But I had a pretty nice Istanbul New Year's.
Really? I love that city.
Oh, it's great.
Reminds me of New York City, kind
It's so cool. I was on a boat on the Bosphorus at midnight, and it was lovely. Yeah.
Okay.
That was pretty special.
That's pretty cool. What scares you?
My own mind.
How so?
You know, we Irish are prone to be melancholy sometimes. Sometimes I get, depression scares me. Fear of the future. Your basics.
What would we be surprised to learn about Rose McGowan? Something you do that's just like kind of weird and wacky.
I only know how to make cake. I don't cook, but I can make a hell of a cake.
Really?
Yeah.
Any kind of cake?
Red velvet especially.
Really? That's not easy.
No, but it's not that hard, but it's more inconvenient. If I'm really hungry, I have to make a cake. I don't know how to do anything else.
Okay, I think you win for that one.
Okay.
What keeps you awake at night?
Injustice. I can't stand it anywhere in the world. You know, and there's so much. There's so much.
If I were to give you a special phone and you could ring up the 20-year-old Rose McGowan and give that young lady a bit of advice, what would you tell her?
I would tell her exactly what she already knew. It's going to be a hard road and it's going to be a long road, but you'll be okay. You're going to be okay. And don't be scared to come into your own power. I was really scared of my own power for a long time.
Didn't believe in it, ignored it, didn't want to use it?
It was almost like it would have too big, you know. And that big fight in the last couple of years took a lot of my power, took everything I had, I would say. And maybe that's what I was scared of. Maybe it was a healthy fear.
Because it took your power away.
It didn't take my power away. It took all the power I had. I still have power, but in the fireball shooting thing, you know, it was like, oh. It was just. I'd rather not have to go into battle again, but I will if I have to. But I'd rather not.
Well, you seem charged up to me. Best advice you've ever received could have been from a parent or a friend or.
Squeeze the lemon. Squeeze the lemon.
And what does that mean?
I think it just means squeeze life. Squeeze that lemon. Get that juice out.
And last one, to that 20-year-old that's watching us out there, the one that's starting off their life, looking at you, and what advice do you give to them? What do they need to keep in mind to maybe squeeze the lemon or to get the most out of this short time?
I'd say read my book. There's a lot in there. There's a lot in there that will help on the journey of becoming who you're meant to be.
These success secrets are only available on the London Real Academy. Become a member and get access to live shows, exclusive courses, my webinars, bonus content, meetups, live events, an amazing community, and much, much more. Now back to the rest of the show.
You know, Rose, we're in a world where the short soundbite gets the attention a lot of times, and I think people know you, and I think we all know each other sometimes by these short sound bites and these tweets, but it's never the truth. Everyone always has a story. What's that old thing, you know, walk a day in a man's shoes or a woman's shoes or non-binary shoes. And then you might understand, you know, what they're all about. And I appreciate the time today, just because I think maybe people will start understanding a little bit more about what you're about and why you do the things you do and why you continue to do those things. And the book does that as well. And I've learned a lot getting ready for this and then spending time with you. So really appreciate what you do and the way you do it and the way that you want to continue this discussion and make it about the humans. It's kind of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get people to listen to each other.
Yeah.
And maybe just listen for a little while.
Just listen.
Yeah, because we're all playing the same game. I think deep down inside, we all want love and we want to love each other.
Yeah.
Just sometimes we don't know how, or we're programmed the wrong way, and sometimes we got to check ourselves. But
Yeah.
I do think we all want to get to the same place.
I believe in us. I do.
Me too.
Yeah.
Rose, thank you so much.
The critics who always speak behind my back, maybe I want to hear them remind me, he's back, the great pretender. I hope this time he gets hurt. I love these guys. They give me fuel. If you want to reach your objective, you want to achieve it, you're going to have to be obsessive. You're going to have to be obsessed. Feel what you do. Feel it. If you're not feeling it, it doesn't matter.
It's Chris Eubank Jr. How do you explain his prowess in the ring?
Junior has that obsession, that genius, that magic. Genius is obsession, but it's in one area.
You studied the sweet science for so much of your life. How do you walk away from it? Do you miss it?
You can't walk away from it. I am it. And even when I dance, really I'm boxing. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, the one who strives valiantly.
What was the worst day of your life, and how has it shaped you as a human being?
When I fought Nigel Benn, I stood like this. It was to mask this. The risk must be taken. That's why you are London Reelers. That's why we're here. We're tired of sitting still, watching it happening for others. Let's do it.